There's two worlds that basically you have to master. We all know it. There's an outside world and an inside world. Our culture reinforces the outside world at the expense of the internal world. That's why there's so much, quote, mental health problems. Because when we get in our minds, we have all these judgments. We have all these expectations. The secret is you can't control the external world, right? I hear people sometimes say, my answer is just let people have their own opinions. And I think, how egotistical is that? They're going to have their own opinions whether you let them or not. You have no power over it. Ego is just fear. We're all afraid we're not enough at times. And when we feel those feelings, we judge ourselves and we judge others, and it creates harshness. But there's an internal world that we can master, that we do have control over. And the way we control it, if I may share with you, is I think there's 3 decisions that everyone listening right now could test out. And those 3 decisions we're making every moment of our life, but we're not always making them consciously. That's the problem. So if you're not making them consciously, you're making them habitually, meaning at a subconscious level, which means you keep living the same problems over and over again. What are those 3 decisions? Decision 1 is, what are you going to focus on? Your entire life is controlled by what you focus on. What you focus on is what you feel. What you focus on is what you experience, not reality. So have you ever had an experience, either one of you, where you thought somebody did something and they were like, you thought a good friend and someone told you something and you thought they took advantage or did something terrible and you got upset, really upset. And then you go to see this person and you find out it wasn't even true. Focus equals reality to the individual, even though it's not reality in actuality. Or a simpler way to say it is focus is feelings. And the quality of your life is where you live emotionally. If you got $1 billion or you have 3 beautiful children and a husband or wife that totally adores you, but every day you focus on what to worry about, or you focus on what's not right or what's missing, you're going to be a very unhappy person. It doesn't matter what you have. What matters is where you focus. Now, I'll walk through in a second the 3 decisions you can make about focus that can change your life. But the second decision, once you focus on something, our brain immediately makes another decision. And if you don't take control of it, it's unconscious, so it's the same. What does this mean? Is this the end or the beginning? Is this person dissing me? Are they challenging me? Are they coaching me? Are they loving me? Whatever meaning you give it instantly changes your emotion, and the quality of your life is where you live emotionally. What's wrong is always available, so is what's right. I'm not talking about positive thinking, I'm about being intelligent. But the meanings, if you think this is the end of a relationship, are you going to behave the same way as if you think it's the beginning of a relationship? No way. I often tell people, if you don't want this to be the end of your relationship, pretend and act like it's the beginning of a relationship, there won't be an end, right? Because people behave radically differently. So meaning equals emotion. Emotion's your life. What's the third decision? Well, once you have an emotion, it controls your decision-making. So if this meaning makes you angry, if the meaning makes you playful, obviously what to do is going to be a different answer based on the emotion. So those 3 decisions control your whole life. And I'll give you some practical examples for the people that are listening right now, or watching, I guess. A tendency in the human brain is the survival mechanism. So you have a 2 million-year-old brain, and its focus is, anything that could be a threat, how do I avoid it? How do I freeze so it doesn't notice me? Or how do I run? Or how do I fight? Right? Those are your choices. And when you're in that survival brain, that's how people respond. And so most people, but it's not just people in survival. You know who is the most focused on what's missing? Overachievers. There's an advantage. When you see what's missing, it's like, okay, I'm going to address it. But the problem is, if you're constantly focused on what's missing, how will you ever sustain happiness? And the answer is, you can't. Don't think about you. It's not you. I'm talking about software. Your soul is a lot more than your software. People think of their mind as who they are. Your mind is not you. Your mind can't even allow you to enjoy an apple. It'll go, is it organic? What's it going to go? So we have to understand the mind reduces things. But you and I can train ourselves to do this, and most people don't. And by the way, a situation like COVID, can you imagine what that did to even people who usually focus on, what's great? They felt like everything was missing. Everything was taken from them that was outside their control, which is why the highest levels of depression, overdose, etc. The human brain, untrained, tends to look for what's wrong. And we have a negative bias is where it starts. That's why the media, there's nothing wrong with the media, but most of the media, we all know, if it bleeds, it leads. Right? Why is the media so negative? It's not the media negative, they're a business. And their job is to take care of shareholders, not you. And so their job is to get as much attention as possible. And we all know it gets attention is something that's going to upset you faster than something that makes you feel good. Right? That's why there are very few feel-good stories and there's so much pain. Conscious attention versus developing a new habit, right? A new way of being, a new immersion. And that's really basically why we do events. That's why we do immersion events, not 2 hours, but it's 4 days when I do it. And people come for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And They wouldn't sit for a 3-hour movie that somebody spent $300 million and we keep them captivated. Because when you do that day and night, and that's like if you want to learn a language and you go a little bit at a time, like most people do in high school and college, they can't speak the language later on. But if I wanted to have you learn Italian and you had the time and money, I'd just drop you in Italy and pick you up in 3 months, and I guarantee you'll be speaking Italian because you're immersed. So I use immersion to do that. So right now, as long as you're doing what you're doing, it's a battle. But when you change the conditioning, it'll just be automatic. I've trained myself like a muscle. It's not like I'm such a good person. It's just, I know to go that place is so deadly. It's so destructive. And there was a stage of my life when I didn't know whether I wanted to be here or not. And when I saw that and I took that in and realized what was creating it, I vowed in my life, I will never go to that place again. It's not from a personal, moral, spiritual perspective, God appreciating perspective, to take your own life would be insane. And so that's what it can eventually lead to for some people. You create enough focus on what's wrong, what's not, you don't have love, you don't have a life, you don't have who you're supposed to be. You come up with enough negative meanings, enough negative emotion, and some people add alcohol or drugs to that, then you really got a good chance of doing something stupid. And so I drew the line in the sand so intensely when I was 17 years old because I saw that's where I was and I didn't want to go there again. But I've also trained myself. It's like the day, it was funny, I had this woman that was, I don't know, I think she's like 78, 79, almost 80 years old. And she went to I went to 3 different cities and she was in the front row. And she was, it's a stadium and she jumping. I mean, I couldn't believe it. She was going so full tilt. And so she came up to me during a break and she wanted to take a picture, which I was happy to do. And I said, hey, do you think I'm the Grateful Dead or something? I said, I think this is your 3rd event. Am I right? She goes, no, it's my 4th. You missed one. I was further back. I said, why do you come? She goes, well, it's like, I get so much out of it. And it's like, you talk about repetition as the mother of mastery. And I said, well, let me give you a clue. That's why I come. I said, because, guess what? I teach this stuff, so I live it. So it's like, if I do this over and over again, it gets in your body. So I've trained myself to do that. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't moments that it happens, but it changes so quick because I know the consequence. But for your listeners, most people tend to focus, number one, on what's missing instead of what they have. Not everybody, but most people that are achievers also do that. So it doesn't mean you've got a problem. It's just, but then you're never fulfilled. If you want to have an extraordinary life, that's what most people want, what is an extraordinary life? It's life on your terms. It's not my terms. Is it 3 beautiful children and a white picket fence? Is it building a business? Is it both? Is it writing a book? Is it having gardening? Is it doing poetry? It's like, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but whatever it is, life on your terms, for you to have that, you have to master 2 skills. The science of achievement. That's how do I take, which both of you are damn good at, right? Or you wouldn't be here. You're entrepreneurs. You've got this huge following. You've done it over this 10 years. Think about that. You've taken things you envision and made them real. Most people don't know how to do that. You've done it on a large scale. You may want to do more, but you've done it on a large scale. There's a science to achievement. Like when I wrote this book, Money Master the Game. I went and interviewed 50 of the most successful financial people on the face of the earth. And I figured out what do they have in common because they're all different. What they do similarly, what were the patterns that are there? Well, that's a science. Christian G and I, over the years, have done a lot of fun things together. And about 2 years ago, we were having a conversation and he said, you teach the secret to life is peak state versus lousy state, or being energy rich versus energy poor, that a relationship, you can love somebody, but if the energy's low, it's not going to show up. The energy's high. Well, he said, what if you swap those words and you swap peak state for beautiful state? I said, that works. A high energy state is a beautiful state. Any state where your high energy would be like love or joy or gratitude or drive or courage or faith or, playfulness or fun, any of those things are beautiful states. So he goes, yeah, I agree. And I said, and then suffering states would be low energy states. So that would be frustration, sadness, anger, resentment, loneliness, boredom, whatever. He goes, yeah, that's exactly right. I can swap those. He goes, if you swap them, there's something cool that you might see or do. I said, what's that, Christian G? And he said, I've made a decision that I'm going to live my life where I'm going to live in a beautiful state every day, no matter what, even if it rains on my parade, even if people do things that are unjust. And he said, the reason is because in a beautiful state, just like you teach a peak state, everything flows. And I said, well, that's pretty much what I've been teaching. He goes, yes, but if you think of the lousy states as suffering states, he said, then you can end suffering just by ending the state. And I said, I don't really relate to the word suffering, and I think most achievers do. Most achievers don't even get fearful, we get stressed. I always tell people fear is the achiever word for stress, because if I follow your stress, it'll take me to your fear. But I realized I didn't relate to suffering. Like if you had told me 2 years ago, Tony, do you suffer? I'd say, are you kidding me? I got the greatest life. I have the most incredible wife and 4 kids, and I got 31 companies, and I'm financially free, and I have a mission I love, and I'm in good health. And that would all be honest. I wouldn't have been dishonest about it. But what really helped me out of that conversation, I left there and I went, well, where do I suffer? And I realized frustration is suffering. I get frustrated, I get concerned, I get pissed off, worried sometimes. I get these feelings. And so what I decided to do was, just really create a 90-second rule for myself where I would end suffering as it arises. Because anybody tells you you're gonna end suffering is full of crap. The reason is your brain is a 2 million year old brain, and it's not designed to make you happy, it's designed to make you survive. But there's no saber-toothed tiger for you to react to anymore, so now we worry about what are people thinking of us, do I have enough money? And in this country, in America, if you are in utter poverty, and I hate poverty, I feed 100 million people a year, so I'm not sitting on the sidelines. But if you make the worst and the least amount of money in this country and you're in total poverty, you're in the 1% of earners on the earth, because 75% of the planet lives on $2.50 a day, right? So what I try to do is show people you can't build on failure, you can only build on success. So over the last 2 years, what I've done is play this little 90-second rule, and if I feel tension in me, I go, okay, that's suffering. Where's it come from? What am I stressed about? What am I concerned about? And what I immediately do is I realize the stressful thought, since I've seen Christian G, I kind of traded one thing. What I really do now is I dig in and I notice that the only time you have stress or suffer is when you believe a stressful thought. So what I told Christian G is I said, I think I've found the 3 triggers to suffering. He goes, what's that? I said, it's lost less, never. Whenever you believe, your mind believes a stressful thought like, oh my God, my business is not going, or oh, this guy screwed this up and now I've lost something. I've lost this opportunity, or I've lost the time, or I've lost the money, or it cannot be someone else, it could be you. You could say, I failed to do this. I did something or I failed to do something, and as a result, I've lost something I value, significance, trust, love, money, freedom, whatever. Or you said something or did something or failed to do something, or I failed to do something or say something, and I feel like I have less love or less money or less freedom. Less will make you suffer. The one that's worse is never. If you start believing that because she said that or she did that, or because I failed to do this or I said that, I'll never have love again, I'll never be wealthy, I'll never be free. Once you believe that shit, it's true, because you won't initiate, you won't solve it, you won't create it. So I'm very sensitive to loss, less, never. Anything that triggers that, and the antidote to it is to realize it's not you. So your thought of, God, my business is stressful, is this gonna, I'm sure it'll make it, but a little more part of you like, is this gonna make it? Right. Or this guy screwed up and look, it screwed me out of all these things. When those things happen and you suffer, it puts you in a mode what you're really suffering about is yourself. And you were honest about it. Thank you for that. I saw you do it. You said, well, I was thinking this guy did this and it cost me this. It's the me that makes us suffer. When a woman will say, I'm really worried about my children, I'm really stressed, she's suffering about her children, and I'll listen to her and I'll say, tell me. And she'll say, well, they're not doing this, not doing that. And I'll turn to her usually and say, I hope you can hear yourself, because the real reason you're suffering is not because of your children. It's not because they're not doing well, it's because you think you failed them. It's about you. Because otherwise you'd just be working on the solution. But you're busy beating yourself up, feeling bad, thinking the worst case scenario, right? So the antidote to suffering, the antidote to loss, less, never is appreciation. I always tell people, trade your expectation for appreciation, your whole life changes. 100 years ago that we're gonna go to the moon and back, you called me a lunatic or crazy. If I said 100 years ago, you're gonna have a little box like this, it'll fit in your pocket, and you can click